All right, welcome to the broadcast. I'm Andrew, and this is our first live stream broadcast. We're kind of breaking from the typical style for this channel, which has been to upload only politicians in their own words. And so in this show, it will be mostly opinion. But in order to be monetized, I received a notification from YouTube that said they want original content. And so in order to reach that, we will be broadcasting predictions and news related videos. So this will be kind of like a radio broadcast. So let's go ahead and get into it. The year 2020, we are looking at a very interesting situation in the political field. Obviously, you have Donald Trump, who basically doesn't have any opposition on his side, and the DNC has a lot that they are trying to manage at the moment. I do not see any good candidate that on the left that can beat Donald Trump. And so I think it will go handily to Donald Trump so far. The only one that actually could stand a chance, the left doesn't want to have anything to do with her, is Tulsi Gabbard. I think that she actually could stand a chance against Donald Trump. She's well-spoken. She's articulate. I do not agree with what she has to say on many issues, but she at least attracts the middle voters. The people that aren't, the people that didn't want to vote for Hillary, that voted for Donald Trump. And there's a lot of those. So she could attract a lot of people that didn't really want to vote for Donald Trump, but they didn't want to vote for Hillary or anyone on the left. So I think they are shooting themselves in the foot because there is nobody on the scene that can beat Donald. Bernie can't. Joe Biden, the more he talks, the more his poll numbers go down. So I think so far the impeachment proceedings are only helping him. And I think that until the Democrats can find somebody, I mean, you had the New York Post or New York Times endorse Klobuchar, which nobody really knows, and Elizabeth Warren. And the only thing that they could say about Elizabeth Warren was that she was a good storyteller. That is not a qualification for the presidency. And tall tales count as stories, I guess. So, yeah, she is a good storyteller because she tells a lot of things that aren't true. She's been caught in many lies, and it's easy to just look aside and say, well, she's just exaggerating. I mean, if anybody listens to Donald Trump, he brags and exaggerates. But his is more of the salesman approach. You know that he's exaggerating. Anybody that listens to him and likes him knows that he's exaggerating. Anybody that listens to him and hates him thinks he's just a big fat liar. So I think that's kind of how that plays out. Most people that listen to Donald Trump can tell when he's exaggerating for the sake of either selling something, which he does, or just is bragging about himself. He does have a huge ego. I don't think anybody can deny that. So I think so far on the political spectrum, there is nobody that is going to be able to stand against Trump in this election. I really think it would be close with Tulsi out of everyone so far. So let me know what you think in the comments section. But also, I wanted to talk about some other things in the news. We have the economy and what just came out about the Pentagon. The Pentagon has a massive discrepancy on their books to the tune of $30 trillion. $30 trillion. That is incredible. And so, how on earth does that work? Are your books allowed to be off by that? No, certainly not. But for whatever reason, of course, we know the reason. The Pentagon can basically do whatever they want. They have a massive budget, but a discrepancy of $32 trillion or $30 trillion, somewhere in the ballpark. After 10 trillion, who's counting? But that is more than the entire United States economy. And their books are off by that much. So there's a lot of shuffling going on. And so I wonder, I don't think that the economy is going to absolutely tank this year. If it does tank this year, it certainly would merit voting for somebody else besides Donald Trump, because so far that is the biggest advantage that Donald Trump has out of all that he's done. It is obvious that the economy is good for everyone. And so if the economy tanks, it's over for Trump, because that's what everybody voted for him, more or less. When people voted for Make America Great Again, they were voting for the economy to improve. I just recently watched a video about Martin Luther King. Well, it was Martin Luther King giving a speech at Stanford. And you may have listened to other things from Martin Luther King, namely the I Had a Dream speech. I have a dream. Well, if you listen to his Stanford speech, it is very revealing. I did not know he was a communist until somewhat recently. The news has been coming out from the FBI files, if you trust those files, that there's a long list of dirt that the FBI dug up on Martin Luther King. Well, some of the dirt that they dug up was that he was a communist. And to be honest, can say that I've listened to some of Martin Luther King's speeches here and there over the years. But just the other day, I listened to his full speech at Stanford, where he talks about universal basic income, which is right along lines of the communist mindset. And so that verified that to me. So what I'm wondering is, in the future, right now you have the demonization of heroes of the founding of America. Most of them are white people, and they are being demonized. So now there is a backlash of it's okay to be white going around, and that's being shunned. But I'm wondering, how long will it take until heroes like Martin Luther King, because nobody is perfect. No, holding anyone up on a pedestal, you will be disappointed. Now, that's not to say that Martin Luther King did not do great things. I think he did. But there is definitely a side of him that I had no clue. And honestly, if you believe the FBI files about what he was into, it's almost par for the course. When people picked on Donald Trump for his relationships with women, if anything, that qualifies. And I don't like it, but most of our presidents, at least in the last 60 to 70 years, have been very immoral. I do not believe that Jimmy Carter was. Ronald Reagan, I don't believe that he had morality issues with women, but definitely Bill Clinton. George Bush Jr. in his younger years, I don't know how much was going on while he was president. JFK definitely, and a number of others. So my question is, when are these heroes on the left going to be, ripped down? One of their statues going to be ripped down? I don't think any of these statues of anyone, even communist statues, they should be removed. So even, any statue of a totally racist person in the South should be removed. I get the desire to destroy it, but we have statues of Nero that still exist, and he murdered thousands of people. So it's history, and if we just get rid of this history, we are going to be doomed to repeat it. So I think if we continue down this path, we're going to be left with no heroes. And that's okay, I think. Honestly, we shouldn't be putting anyone up on a pedestal. Everyone has problems. Everyone has weaknesses. And when you run for office, they are all put out for everyone to see. And so then it's a matter of how much of this can you bear, or how similar are this person's proclivities and vices to mine? Or, how much of what they're saying do I like versus how much are they saying or involved with do I hate? But then you get involved with politicians that are very skilled liars and deceivers. You see this all the time. Hillary Clinton did it all the time, where all of a sudden she'd have a different accent, or she'd be interested in certain things that she knew nothing about. Mitt Romney did the same thing all the time, where it was just felt so awkward. But when she's playing to a crowd, Hillary Clinton all of a sudden would have a Southern accent. Well, if I recall, she grew up in Chicago. There's not much South going on in Chicago. OAC does the same thing. She has done it, and it's just sounded awful. All of a sudden, you hear some person with a total, West Coast accent, and then they'll say Mexico, as if that suddenly makes them more ethnically palatable, more cultural. So I'm glad to see all this political correctness going down the toilet, because it's preventing people from speaking about what they really think and preventing people from showing who they really are. So I think we will see there is a huge division, because now they're taking like The Simpsons. Simpsons cartoon has now officially gotten rid of Apu because he's a cultural stereotype. Well, Apu is one of the cast. They are all cultural stereotypes. Homer is, Bart is, Chief Wiggum, dirty cop that likes donuts, or, slightly corrupt. Mayor Quimby has a New Englander accent. He's a Kennedy. So all of the characters on The Simpsons, Groundskeeper Willie, cultural stereotypes. But now they've made it official. He's out. Apu is out. But, The Simpsons were over a long time ago as far as their, relevance and even their comedy, unfortunately. But that's the case. You watch anything long enough, very few creators can back away from their creation when it's at the top. And so Jerry Seinfeld did that. They were at the top. They wanted to sign him for another year. And instead, he said, nope, we're done. We're going out on the top, which I think is wise, but it is very tempting to just keep making money. So, what else do we have in the news? This is a bizarre story. The Saudi prince sends Jeff Bezos, hacks his phone, and then sends him text messages. And this is the article that I'm looking at is on the New York Post. It's just kind of a bizarre story. I honestly don't know what to think about it. In fact, so Saudi Arabia denies that anything happened, and we'll see what happens there. But you have this race between Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Who's the guy at Virgin Atlantic? I can't remember his name. Bronson. And Jeff Bezos. They have so much wealth, and a lot of them are getting into space and space exploration and space mining or the ideas of mining and traveling. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think we have a lot longer to go before we see any major progress. This is such a huge undertaking to do this with any results. This is going to take so much money for us to get a return on the investment. I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetimes, any kind of return on this investment, but it's definitely going to happen. And I do think it's awesome that they are spending this money on these things. I do think that there's some other things. If I was as wealthy as them, I'd be involved in a lot of humanitarian projects. At least I think I would. Money changes you. A lot of people think, speaking of The Simpsons and Jeff Bezos, Mr. Beans, if ever there was a equivalent visually and just he has a monopoly. Jeff Bezos and Mr. Burns are you would if Bezos didn't come after, if The Simpsons came after Bezos' rise to wealth and prosperity, everyone would just assume that Matt Groening patterned Mr. Burns after Jeff Bezos. So anyway, that's just a weird story that's coming out about a hack by a Saudi prince, Jeff Bezos. Now, going back to politics, Tulsi Gabbard is suing Hillary Clinton. And a lot of people think that Hillary Clinton is going to run again for president, that she's just kind of waiting for a contested convention, and she will step in as the heir to the throne of the DNC. If you don't know, Tulsi Gabbard, Hillary Clinton said that Tulsi was a Russian asset, and which is ridiculous. So I think it's fair, and Hillary Clinton is just taking stabs, I think, at people that she knows. If she did run, she knows that Tulsi is a threat, and she also knows that Bernie Sanders is still a threat, because there are a lot of disenfranchised voters from the last election, if you recall, that she burned. She burned a bunch of Bernie voters. She attacked him again, said nobody likes Bernie, and calls Tulsi a Russian asset. So it's just a mess. It's just a huge mess. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. I could see Tulsi coming back later once the field has changed. I'm glad that some like Beto and Cory Booker have been all but disappeared at this point from the stage. They are difficult ones to listen to for any prolonged period of time. Almost all of them are. Anyway, so that is, let's see, what did we hit the economy? I've been watching Bitcoin for a number of years now. It took me a while to figure out what it was and, all of the details about it. And I'm having a hard time deciding if it's something that can make a comeback. I think in order for Bitcoin or cryptocurrency to make a comeback, would have to be some massive cataclysmic event like a major attack on or by a first world country to another first or very prominent second world country to shake things up enough to where people start using cryptocurrency to move their money quickly and discreetly from their country to wherever they will be heading to. Typically when wars break out, big wars, you will have populations shifting. And so that is what I see happening with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Adam Schiff and the impeachment, which I'm so tired of hearing about, but if you listen to any of it, he made up another fake Trump quote. Why don't they use actual quotes from people? There's no shortage of them. That is what my channel, Free Propaganda, is based on. Actual quotes from these politicians. I will be uploading these videos like you're seeing here to add some original content. However, Adam Schiff, if he's going to win favor in the idea of an impeachment, he can't be making up quotes. It's like crying wolf. And so we'll see what happens there. I don't think anything will happen other than giving Trump more of a boost. Pizza delivery driver pulls a gun and shoots the would-be robbers. Wow, that's a rough job, man. Pizza delivery. Not one I'd be in line to. I've never actually never in my life ordered delivery pizza. But I just imagine that that's a very stressful job. It is a job, so someone's going to fill it. Somebody that needs the cash, but it's just so dangerous. You never know who you're going to, and the world just keeps getting more and more crazy. Now, as far as the Me Too movement in 2020, I think that there's still enough momentum that we did not see the end of it. We're having a lull in it because of the politics that are kind of taking center stage. But I think there's still enough momentum. Weinstein's been burned, and there's still a lot of people that will be going down. I don't think this is the end of what we're seeing there. So this is the first broadcast here of Free Propaganda's 2020 predictions on January 23rd, 2020. Let me know in the comments below what you think so far of my predictions, political, economic, and just current events of what's going on. Here's something else that's new. If you remember Tommy Robinson which is not his real name, but he is a British icon of free speech, and love him or hate him, what just came out is that Facebook admitted that they lied about Tommy. So they admitted that's actually good to hear, but Tommy went to prison, and there was a lot of momentum about making a lot of momentum in trying to make him just go away and shut up. And so he's back in the news, and he's gaining more credibility now with the admission that they lied about his character in order to justify removing him from the platforms, which is a scary thing if you consider all of the creators out there that are dependent on these platforms to make a living. So that is happening now as well. I think then this is all going to, I think the left, and I think all of the media companies and social media companies are really in for a big surprise yet again, 2020. Ricky Gervais' comments at the Golden Globes Award are a perfect example. He was one whose voice could break free and really be heard by everyone. He wasn't controlled clearly. And he spoke very frankly and openly to a crowd of people that are all about preserving an image. And so because he spoke the way he did, and it sent shockwaves through all of the media and entertainment industry, there for him, everybody knows who he is, and he had that platform. But there are millions of people in the world that already know what's going on and are sick of it. And so their voice is going to be heard at the ballot. I think that is how that is actually going to happen. And so it will be interesting to see what happens in that department as well. I just realized I need to make sure that, it's going through. Just doing a technical inspection of the broadcast to ensure that we are getting sound. It would be awful to to have been talking this long in a room by myself. So that is another aspect. So there's so many things changing so quickly in the world that it's whiplash. It's too much change. Nobody can keep track of it. Nobody can keep up with it. Maybe in very narrow spectrums, people can pay attention and watch, but the whole broad spectrum of culture and politics and government and technology, it's all changing so fast that people really need to be grounded on basic truths of what they believe and what they know. They have to be grounded on those things in order to stay sane. Let's put it that way, because there's so much changing. Now, I saw an article that said that you are transphobic if you refuse to date somebody from the trans community. Now, that's just ridiculous. But let's go ahead and use that term. Let's use that term accurately. Phobic, repulsed, repelled, not interested in. So it's true. Again, going back to the political correct type of speech, it needs to end. And so I think it will. I think 2020 is going to be the nail in the politically correct coffin. It will be the nail in the not the triggered, um, overreacting crowd. I don't know how long that's going to last, but it can't last forever, can it? Can that last forever? I think in the future I'm going to have interviews and guests on this channel to talk politics, and that's what this channel is about. I honestly don't like politics. I find them boring and childish and unfortunately necessary to the degree that we need a government to prevent anarchy. And so with that, it's a necessary and very unpleasant situation to have to pay attention to the political world, to pay attention to what some people that may have very crazy ideas but very persuasive and charismatic personalities that can get you to almost be, not almost, but to definitely be hypnotized into going along until it's way too late and damage has been done, consequences are in full swing, and there's no stopping it. And so that's why I prefer to take a very conservative approach in my mindset, and my politics are very conservative, because the consequences of moving so brazenly into areas out of emotion are just massive and so long lasting. Like throwing a stone in a river or in a lake, the ripples just travel and go for a very long time. And once they hit something, they bounce in a different direction that you don't see coming. So 2020 is not going to be a boring year by any stretch of the imagination. And it is going to be full of surprises. But what's not surprising to me is that I'm not surprised anymore. It's almost as if I expect for the crazy to happen. I expect the wildest thing that you could imagine the next day when I wake up. I used to look at the Drudge Report quite often. Not so much anymore. Something has obviously happened, and I think here's my theory on the Drudge Report, because up until the impeachment hearings, it seemed very, very clear that he was conservative leaning. And so my theory is that in his mind, because if you know the history of Matt Drudge, his big break and his whole rise as a news aggregate, news website, came from the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And so you have the impeachment of Donald Trump. And so in order to be fair and honest, you have to almost treat it the same way. In his mind, I'm just trying to think of it from his perspective, that if he has Donald Trump in the same, situation as Bill Clinton was, in order to be fair, he has to treat this news cycle the same way that he treated Bill Clinton, to be viewed as a unbiased news source. And so maybe that's what's going on. I have also considered maybe he's been compromised. Maybe he's not running it anymore. There was a kind of a story about that going around, that Drudge Report they used the word was, overseeing things, and they ended up changing that word to say is. So apparently Matt Drudge is still there. And it could be that he just changed his mind. Who knows? But if you watched the rare interviews of Matt Drudge, you'll know that he is very awake and aware of the manipulation that is going on in the news world and by all of these tech companies that are trying to control narratives and news. And so maybe that's what's going on. It's difficult to tell because he doesn't speak openly so much. He kind of lets the news that he picks speak for him. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section below as well. I'd be interested to hear that. Now, so far we have touched a lot of these topics that are kind of news and politics, but let's get into maybe some biblical predictions. Now, biblical predictions are interesting because they're prophecies, and there's some instances that are very clear-cut fulfillment of prophecies, and others are not so much. Every once in a while you see and hear biblical prophecies coming to pass. And I think it's worth paying attention to, well, it's not I think it's worth, I know it's worth paying attention to the news and events. If you are a Christian, you may know or should know that Christ warned of all of these calamities and great wars and pestilences and famines and just awful stress and persecutions that will be happening in the last days. But he gives his reassurance that he's not telling you these things to scare you. He's telling you these things so that you can see and know and be aware. I didn't have any anything in mind specifically about any kind of biblical predictions, but what I do find interesting is there are signs and wonders in heaven that are counted as indicators and fulfillments of prophecies. For example, at the time of Christ's birth, you have the star that appeared in the heavens, which interestingly was now I don't have the source to this on me, but there is a YouTube video of a Chinese preacher, and he was speaking of ancient Chinese astronomers that recorded a appearance of a star that appeared in the west skies at the time of Christ's birth. Now, they didn't write at the time of Christ's birth, but it coordinated specifically to the same time. And they described it more as a giant comet than a star, but it emanated from a star. And the Chinese name, the translation of that star or that constellation, that the comet that appeared, was called translates to the perfect sacrifice, which I'm going to be doing more research into that. But my point is, you had the great American eclipse, the full eclipse that crossed the entire North American continent. And when that happened, I stood at a point of totality, is what it's called. And it did feel like a spiritual experience. It felt like I kind of had not revelation, but I felt more of a place in the universe, if you want to put it that way. And a lot of people looked into it as if it was either a sign from heaven, a sign that God is showing that the country is divided, and which it definitely was and is at the time. And this was just a number of years ago. But I'm wondering what types of events are going to be around the corner, either not supernatural so much as just natural events that will either fulfill prophecies in the next few years, or that are fulfilling prophecies, waves being heaved beyond their bounds. That's one that people cite. And what was interesting, and what I'm curious about, as more archaeological research is done and satellites are able to discover geological and archaeological sites and locations, is what information will be revealed about either the whereabouts of the lost tribes of Israel and other scriptural texts from any ancient cultures, any religious texts that may complement what is known from other religions. The Tree of Life, for example, archetypal story, is known throughout so many cultures and so many different times and separated cultures. So you have the Tree of Life accounts in ancient China, you have Tree of Life accounts in Middle Eastern cultures, and you have Tree of Life accounts in Mesoamerican cultures. And so there's a common thread there. And so I'm wondering, it's not going to be long until more records are discovered from other civilizations. It is a total shame that the Spanish conquistadors destroyed the Aztec and Mayan records, just throwing them in fires, when it could have given so much insight as to what they believed and things that were common. So hopefully, that's not so much a prediction as it is a hope that something in the future comes around and gives us more light and knowledge about our common beliefs, because I think we all need to be more united on those fronts. It is very difficult to make any progress in any area with such divided people, and there's more that unites us than divides us. But I would like to make a prediction also. I've been paying attention to all of the abortion news, and I think the pro-choice movement has really overplayed their hand. And I could be speaking about this in a very aggressive tone, but I'm trying to have a conversation in a way that I can talk to people that disagree with me. So what I see happening is the abortion industry has gone way too far, way over the line, to where they will allow a child to be born and then the parents decide for it to be aborted or not. You can't put that on the table of anyone on the right and expect any kind of reaction that is not immediately furious. And so you're going to see the pendulum swing back in the opposite direction very quickly and very hard. And I think that's a good thing, because the leading cause of death in 2019 was abortion. That was the most dangerous place to be, was in a mother's womb in 2019. I don't think that should continue. And so I'm going to be signing out on that. I think that that's been probably the most important point to make. And if you disagree with me, let me know why. But that is a conversation that needs to be had. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope something was of value to you in listening to this. Click subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next broadcast, thanks and have a good day.